Whether you are looking to build a new career or kickstart that new idea that you've got,
Microsoft Reactor connects you with the developers and startups that share your goals.
Learn new skills, meet new peers, and discover the latest in technology.
Events are running around the clock, so join us anytime, anywhere.
Reactors are communities to connect. We want you to meet real developers and entrepreneurs just like you. Here you can get skilled up and learn from our product experts in the Microsoft Cloud and in open source. So watch us on demand and share your own perspective as we live stream in communities all around the world.
Hey there everyone, hope you are all doing good. I am Partharu, Events and Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor India. And yes, I welcome you all yet another episode of Copilot Chronicles. But before we start our today's event, let's go through our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, participate together. So please be respectful of other people's views, understanding their differences. Be kind and considerate in a way we all engage. Yes, we do encourage you all to participate. Please drop all your questions in the comment section and we'll pick it up from there. And now, I'd like to bring in our host, Kamal Shree, who is a developer advocate from M365. Hey, hi,
Hi.
Kamal, how are you?
All good, all good. Excited for another season of Copilot Chronicles. So,
Wow,
welcome
great.
everyone.
Title looks so creative, and hope the session is also very attentive today. Like
Indeed, it's gonna be
declarative
interesting.
agents with
Yeah,
Teams Toolkit. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So
Thank you.
I'll not delay much more. Kamal, the floor is all yours.
Thank
And
you.
I think we also have Matteo at the backstage, but you can introduce and welcome him soon. Yep.
Sure, Pat. Thank you so much. Hey, folks, welcome everyone to the Copilot Chronicles series again. So this time we have a very interesting topic, which is like building declarative agents with Team Toolkit. I was just waiting for this topic to be announced. Post Ignite, we had loads of updates, and here we are with our very own speaker, Matteo, who's a senior cloud solution architect on Microsoft Modern Work CSU Global AI and Ecosystem team. And he works for the M365 and the Copilot ecosystem. And he's been a Microsoft MVP in Windows development and served in Nokia prior joining to Microsoft. And today's topic is a very interesting one where he's going to talk about the declarative agent is a customized, I would say it's a customized version of M365 Copilot that kind of allows you to create more personalized experience by declaring specific instructions, actions, and knowledge. Now, here you will find the session giving more information as to how you could build declarative agent by using Teams Toolkit. So, welcome, Matteo. Looking forward for your session, and the form is all yours.
Thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And Kamal just did a great introduction to the topic of today, so let's dive right away into the content. And let's start talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the main experience we will focus on today. So Copilot was launched more than 1 year ago, so probably you are familiar today about this service. Microsoft 365 Copilot is a generative AI service, so it's based on large language models. And the main key features between that makes Microsoft 365 Copilot different than other services is the connection to the Microsoft Graph. So you can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to get answers related to your organizational data, like your SharePoint files, your OneDrive documents, your mails, your Teams chats. However, as we rolled out Copilot to many customers all around the world, we started to understand that our customers were looking to to have more tailored experiences. So, for example, they want to offer Copilot to help employees with their questions about the company policies. But in this case, they don't want to Copilot to use all the information that are sitting in the Microsoft 365 tenant, but they want to use, for example, only the official company policies that are published in the HR SharePoint site. Or another scenario is that Microsoft 365 is the main hub for many of our customers, but there are many scenarios, there are many business scenarios where you don't have an app component in Microsoft 365 that can help solving the business need. You need a CRM, you need to manage tickets, you need to manage a knowledge base. These are all scenarios in which customers might want to leverage another solution like ServiceNow, like Salesforce, like Jira. And these solutions, however, they contain data that is important for our customers. So they would like to be able to combine this data with what they have in Microsoft 365 and use it through the Copilot experience. So this is why we have introduced the concept of agents, which is a way to take the base Copilot experience and tailor it for your specific needs and your specific organizational scenarios. I really like the way Satya talked about this new wave of agents in the recent Ignite conference, which is considering M365 Copilot as the UI for AI. So M365 Copilot is the main entry point to use UI within the Microsoft 365, to use AI within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. But behind the scenes, we can have a lot of different experiences powered by agents. So you can use M365 Copilot as a generic purpose tool, or you can have more tailored experiences with agents built with tools like Copilot Studio or the Teams Toolkit. So with the agent story, we are able to take Microsoft 365 Copilot and extend it so that we can bring additional knowledge, additional skills, and even introduce concepts like process automation. Why we are talking about agents? Why not just Microsoft, but the whole industry is shifting towards the concept of agents? Because agents are capable to completely transform and reinvent complex and dynamic processes. If you think about a complex business scenario that you have in your organization, it's probably that typically this scenario, in order to be solved today, requires multiple steps, requires multiple roles with different skills, different specializations. This is the same with agents. With agents, you can take a complex scenario, and instead of trying to solve it with a single tool, you can split the work among different tools, and each of them can have its own skills, its own knowledge, its own capabilities. And with agents, you can build a lot of different type of solutions that can meet different needs. So we can go from the simplest type of agent, the instructional agents, where you can provide a custom set of instructions and use them to tailor the Copilot experience on your specific needs. Then you might decide that you want to add knowledge to an agent and build a retrieval agent, which is capable to give you information starting from a specific set of data. Then you can move to the next step, which is creating task agent. So agents that are able to perform actions. You can give tools to these agents that they can use to automate our flow, for example. Until the final step, the ultimate step of the agent complexity, which are autonomous agents that are able to operate independently. So they don't trigger because they are not triggered because of an interaction with the user, but because something happened, because of an event, because a signal they detected. And they are capable of planning an execution, of solving a problem, and also eventually also orchestrate work with other agents. So these are some some concrete example of the type of agents I just described. We have retrieval agents like the IT help desk agent, where I can ask questions like, how do I connect to the corporate network? And I'm expecting that the answer will come from, for example, the official internal FAQ provided by the IT team. Or the device refresh agent that is able also to perform actions. It's a task agent. I can use it to go through the process of requesting a new laptop for my everyday work. Up until to the autonomous agents like a lead gen agent that is able to do researches on new leads. And these researches are a consequence not of the user asking, for example, to an agent to do something, but simply because new leads have been added to a CRM. And the agent automatically understands that it needs to perform some work. When we talk about the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, we typically talk about two types of agents. We talk about declarative agents when we focus on using the Microsoft 365 Copilot architecture. So we are extending the basic experience of Microsoft 365 Copilot. And this is the type of agent that we will focus on today. Then for some other scenarios in which you might need more control and a more curated experience, you can also build your own agent using custom engine agents. Regardless of the type of agent you want to build, we offering different choices. We have solutions for citizen developers using Copilot Studio, which is based on a low-code technology, and it's a part of the Power Platform. Or we can tailor the experience for pro-code developers using the Visual Studio Code and the Teams Toolkit. Today, we will focus on the second story, so how pro developers can use Visual Studio Code and the Teams Toolkit to build a declarative agent. This is the overall architecture of an agent. So an agent is made by a foundational model, which is the large language model used to provide the generative AI capabilities. You have an orchestrator, which is the software that takes care of everything that goes between the interaction of the user and the response that the user they get. So it takes care of everything in the middle, like retrieving the right information, apply responsible AI. And then we have the user experience, which is the way the user interacts with the agent. The user experience might be optional because, for example, in case of an autonomous agent, you don't even need a user experience. The agent will automatically kick off when a specific event happens. And then an agent can be enriched with knowledge, so instructions and data they can use, with skills, which empowers the agent with actions and capabilities, and autonomy, which empowers the agent to create a plan and to execute a complex business workflow. When we talk about declarative agents, we are talking about agents where most of the layers are provided by Microsoft. Because when you are building a declarative agent, you are building an agent which is using the foundational models, the orchestrator engine, and the user experience provided by Microsoft 365 Copilot. As a developer, what you can do is enhance the knowledge by adding instructions and providing a specific data source. And you can enrich the skills by adding actions which you can use to add new capabilities to the agent. Which are the scenarios in which you might want to use a declarative agent? It's a scenario that requires focus on specialization, and you need, for example, to target specific roles in the organization like HR, sales, finance. But at the same time, you don't need such a deep and complex customization layer. You want to reuse the capabilities of Microsoft 365 Copilot. You want to offer this experience through the Microsoft 365 Copilot user interface. And actually, you want to leverage the capabilities of Copilot, for example, of using the graph to use organizational data. This is how a declarative agent looks like. So a declarative agent is made by a set of custom instructions that explains how the agent should behave, a set of focus data optionally, so you can decide a data source that the agent will use to generate responses. And when the data in the Microsoft 365 organization is not enough, you can extend the agent to use external data and external platforms with connectors and plugins. Let's see step by step how we can build an agent and how we can add various components to it. Let's start with the simplest type of agents, which are instructional agents. Instructional agents are agents where you customize your instructions so that Copilot can behave in the way you need, with a specific tone, with a specific way of responding. And instructions can be also very complex because, for example, you can also enable turn-by-turn experiences. You can provide context. So you can think of instructions like a way to basically templatize complex prompts. So you can, if you have a complex prompt and a complex context that you are using daily in your work, you can create a template using an agent, and then you can create an experience which is the agent just knows what you mean. You don't have to explain the context all the time, but you can just use the agent and it already knows what you want to achieve. Recently at Ignite, we have announced a series of first-party agents that are included in the Biz chat experience, and these are very great examples of the power of instructional agents. These are agents that are based solely on instruction, on custom instructions, but they are very powerful. You have agents like the writing coach, where you can share some text and get feedback on how to improve it. You have the prompt coach that you can use to improve your prompt engineering skills. So if you have a Copilot license, go to the store and give it a try. They can really help you to understand the complex scenarios that you can build just by providing a custom set of instructions. But now let's take a look at how we can create an instructional agent. And the starting point is the Teams Toolkit, which is an extension for Visual Studio Code. Once you have installed the Teams Toolkit, you have the option to create a new app, and you can see that we have various options. The one we are looking for is Agent, which is the option to create exactly a declarative agent. So we pick this option. The only option we have here is to create a declarative agent. For the moment, let's start with a simple scenario. So let's create only a declarative agent. We will add plugins later. Let's choose a folder where we want to create our agent, and let's give it a name. In my case, I'm going to build an agent that can help people around IT questions from my organization. So I'm going to call it my IT Helper Demo. And now we get a new project with a series of files that makes up the architecture, the infrastructure of a declarative agent. The first one is the manifest. If you have some experience in building applications for the Microsoft Teams ecosystem, this will be familiar because this is the same exact manifest of a Teams application. The only difference is that now we have a new section called Copilot Agents, where we can say that this application contains a declarative agent, and this file is the one which includes the description of the declarative agent. So let's take a look at this declarative agent.json file. And as you can see, this is a file, it's a JSON file where we can provide the capabilities of the agent. In this case, the default experience is a simple agent, so the only capability which is defined is the instructions one. And as you can see, we have this placeholder that basically points to a text file which contains our instructions. So if we open the instructions.txt, we can find an example of a set of instructions. In this case, however, we want to have an IT helper. So let's replace this type of instructions with another set of information. So let's replace this with the have, because we're saying that you are an agent specialized in helping employees with questions about the IT scenarios. And then we explain to the agent how we are expecting responses. So use the following schema. Start with the sentence "Hello from your friendly IT help desk agent." Add a section to recap the question, and add a section with the answer. And then we ask you also to provide this information in two languages. So we want to have this schema in English and then also in Italian. And then we have also an example. We provide also an example to help the LLM to understand which is our expectation. Now that we have everything, we are ready to test our agent. And the Teams Toolkit makes this easy because when we go to the Teams Toolkit tab, we have this panel here where we can log in with our Microsoft 365 account. So as long as we have a Copilot license and the option to upload the custom applications, we will be able to test directly the declarative agent. And to test it, we can click on this option here under the lifecycle panel, which is called provision. So when we click this, now the Teams Toolkit will start the process of deploying the declarative agent in our Microsoft 365 tenant for the selected user. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, once it's done, we can go to our Microsoft 365 Copilot portal, and let's refresh the page so that we can see if the agent was properly installed. Let's give it a few seconds for the Copilot experience to load. Okay, Copilot is loading. So now when you go to the Biz Chat experience, in the right panel, you can find all the agents that are available for our users, that you also the IT helper that we have just installed. The agent is still loading up. Okay, we have the Microsoft 365 experience coming up. Okay, we have Microsoft 365 Copilot coming up, and we can see that now on the right panel, we have our new agent called My IT Helper Demo. So we said that this agent can be used to ask questions about IT support topics. So for example, let's ask how can I fix my printer? Very common question in the IT world. And we will see now that our agent will follow exactly the instructions we have provided. So the answer starts with desk agent. Then we have the English version with question and answer. And then we have the full answer. If you scroll it down, we can see that the same schema was used also in Italian. So the agent has properly followed all the instructions that we have provided. However, the downside of this agent right now is that all this response was generated starting from the internal knowledge of the LLM, because right now the agent doesn't have access to any data source. In a real scenario, we would like instead the agent to be able to use our internal IT FAQ and information to properly answer to the questions. So let's move to the next step and let's see how we can add to an agent knowledge, how we can build a retrieval agent. And to build a retrieval agent, we have different options. We can add SharePoint sites, files, and folder to be used as a data source. We can enable web content so that the agent is able to go on the web and search for information that can be used to generate a response. Or we can use also graph connectors that have been configured in the tenant. What is a graph connector? A graph connector is a software, it's a service that you can use to bring data from an external system into the Microsoft 365 tenant. So if you are using other platforms than Microsoft 365, like ServiceNow, Azure DevOps, Jira Cloud, and this data contains important information from your organization, you can bring them into the Microsoft 365 experience. When you use graph connectors, you use graph connectors when you have unstructured data, like long form text, and you want to use unpredictable prompts. So you want to, for example, ask to summarize a text. You want to compare two knowledge base items. You want to extract key information from a work item in Azure DevOps. Another key criteria for graph connectors is they are a good fit when you have items that are not very frequently up to date. For example, scenarios like a document repository, a knowledge base, a website, or a content management system. And the reason for that is because, as I explained a few slides ago, graph connectors actually import the data into the tenant. Graph connectors offer a sync mechanism to keep the data up to date, but it's not a real-time communication with the external platform. So graph connectors aren't a good fit for scenarios in which you need the data to be in real time. Our knowledge base for the IT department is a perfect example of a good fit for a graph connector, because the information about the IT department, like how do I connect to the corporate network, they typically don't change every day. They stay stable for a while. So they are a great fit for using a technology like graph connector. Let's see how we can expand our agent to use knowledge, to use information. And we do that by going back to our declarative agent configuration. So from here, we can add a new section called capabilities, where we can explain the feature. We can add a new feature to our agent. In this case, I'm going to add as a new feature the access to a specific SharePoint site. And let me show you this SharePoint site. This is a SharePoint site in which I'm storing documents that contains some information about processes in the IT department, like refreshing the laptop or connecting to the corporate network. And then let's say that in my tenant, I have also a ServiceNow connector with a knowledge base of information that are relevant for IT topics. I can do that by adding a new capability, which is the graph connector capability. So from here, I can add a new section, which is called graph connectors. And what I need to supply is the ID of the graph connector that I want to use. If I go to the configuration, the admin portal of my tenant, I can see that I have different graph connectors that are bringing external data into the tenant. One of them is called ServiceNow. It's the ServiceNow one. And I can see that this is the ID of the connector. So this is the ID that I needed to put in the configuration of my declarative agent. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's provision a new version, an updated version of my agent. So it's going to update the definition of the agent on my tenant. So once the operation is completed, I can go to my Copilot. I can go back to my Copilot. Let's refresh it, and now. So let's wait for the Copilot experience to show up. Okay, Copilot is loading. And now you will be able to see that when I start to ask, I'll be able to use not just generic information in the LLM, but also specific information. So in this case, for example, let's ask something which is more specific, like how can I connect to my corporate network? This is the type of questions that typically an LLM out of the box it's not able to answer, or it's able to answer only by creating content because it doesn't know the specific of my organization. While in this case, we can see that we have a response. The response is following the instructions I provided. So we have, again, the format question, answer, English, and Italian. But in this case, I can see that there's a reference. So the answer was generated starting from one of the documents that is published in my SharePoint site. So it's not using any document available in the tenant, but it's using only the specific documents that, as IT administrator, I approved as trusted documents for my organization. Let's not forget that we have added also the ServiceNow connector. So let's see if we can get some information about the articles I have in my knowledge base. So for example, I can say, that's helpful. Can you help me to understand how can I protect myself from mail scams? So let's see this time what happens. We are getting another answer following the same instruction set, the same format, but we can see that this time the references are coming from ServiceNow. So it's actually using the data that was imported by the Graph connector. We can see that also because if I click on a reference, I'm redirected to the ServiceNow portal. In this case, it's a developer instance that I'm using for testing, so the instance is hibernating. I can't see the details, but I was able to use information that lives outside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem to generate a response, to get relevant information for me. The final step is to enhance the agent by adding actions, by creating what we call a task agent. A task agent is able not only to retrieve information, but also to interact with another platform or another service. And in the world of declarative agents created with the Teams Toolkit, this is achieved by adding a plugin. A plugin is created starting from an API. So we just need to provide an open API specification of the platform we want to connect, and the Teams Toolkit will be able to generate an agent that can interact with this API. And what's relevant is that thanks to actions, the agent is able to perform an action and understand how to call a plugin, basically just by using the intent of the user, just by using the description of the plugin. So we don't have to call it explicitly or explain in code how to use this API. Automatically, the LLM will figure it out based on the Open API specification and the description of the API. So what is a plugin? A plugin, unlike a Graph connector, is an external component. So when an agent calls a plugin, it's actually calling an API. So it's actually directly calling an external API which sits outside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. When you use a plugin, when you need real-time data, we are calling an API. So typically what you get back is a real-time information. When you have highly relational data or very large-scale data set that would be very hard to import into the tenant using a Graph connector. Or when you need a more precise prompt. So, for example, when you have a scenario where the prompt can be easily translated into an API call. For example, give me the list of tickets assigned to Matteo Pagani. This is something that can be easily translated to an API that, for example, filters out the results by the name of the person assigned to the ticket. Another key difference between plugins and Graph connector is that plugins are able not just to read information, but also to write. So you can have an action, and the outcome of this action is the creation of content in the other platform. Create a new ticket, create a work item, update the customer information in a CRM, and so on. Generally speaking, from a developer perspective, if you have an API, it's easy to translate this API into an API plugin and plug this API into an agent. So for this reason, good candidates for plugin are all scenarios like accounting and finance, CRM, ERP platforms, HR management, all scenarios in which getting real-time information is critical, and in which getting the ability to not just read information, but also to create or update data is critical. Let's see how we can enhance our agent with a plugin. And for doing that, I'm going to use an API that I built to simulate the management of ticket. So the scenario is that now my agent is able to retrieve information from the knowledge, from the internal knowledge about IT topics. But let's say that now I'm hitting a blocker. I read the documentation, I read the FAQ, I'm stuck, I still have problems, I want to create a ticket. So I want to empower my agent to create a ticket. So in this case, I have this API, which is described by an OpenAPI specification. So I have an OpenAPI file, which is in JSON or YAML, that describes how my API works. So what I can do is that I can go to Visual Studio Code, and among the development options, I have one called Add Plugin. When I click this option, I can say that I want to start with an OpenAPI description, or that I want to import an existing plugin. In this case, I want to start from an OpenAPI description, which is online. So I can choose the first option, and then I can go back to my browser and pick the URL of my OpenAPI specification. Teams Toolkit recognizes how my API works, and it's telling me that my API offers 3 methods, one to delete, one to get, and one to post. In my case, I want to just use get and post. So I want to give the option to get and create tickets. I select the manifest. Visual Studio is telling me that it's going to make some changes. Yes, please do them. And now we can see these changes. So we have a new section called Actions that points to a file called AI plugin.json. Inside this file, we have the description of our API. So we can see that our API has an endpoint called getTickets. The description is that this endpoint gets the tickets with a given keyword in the title or assigned to a specific person. And then we even have an adaptive card that we can use to render results coming from my plugin. And then if we go to the bottom, we can see also that we have a pointer to the OpenAPI specification. So the OpenAPI specification is downloaded and it's included inside the package. This is the same OpenAPI specification that you have seen in the browser. What's important here is that every endpoint and every parameter is properly described in natural language, because that's what the agent will use to understand, based on the prompt of the user, if and when to call your plugin. So now that we have added the plugin, we can provision it and deploy the new version of the plugin. Let's wait for the provisioning to complete. Okay, now it's here. So let's hit new chat. And for example, let's ask, give me the tickets assigned to Matteo Pagani. When we do this, the first thing that will happen is that remember that when we are talking with a plugin, we are talking with an external platform. So we are actually sharing data outside the Microsoft 365 boundaries. So to make sure that the customers are aware of what's happening on the other platform, we are asking them consent. And we are also sharing with them which data we are sending. In this case, based on the prompt, the agent has understood that we need to call the endpoint for tickets. And in this case, there's a parameter of the API called assign to that needs to be set with Matteo Pagani. We want to always allow the usage of this API. So now the agent is going to move forward and it's going to call the API and use information to populate a response. So we can see that we have 4 tickets that have been assigned to Matteo Pagani. And when we go over the reference, we can see our adaptive card. So this is the adaptive card, which is rendered with the information coming back from my API. If you have challenges or you are having issues in generating in getting a response, you can have some help by using developer mode. So if you go to the Copilot chat and you type -developer on, you can turn on developer mode. When developer mode is on, every time you interact with Copilot, you will see this panel called Show Plugin Developer Info, where you can see what happened behind the scenes. So in this case, we can see that our agent has a plugin, which is enabled. And this agent, this plugin, has two functions: get tickets and create tickets. Based on the prompt, the agent has determined that the function to execute is the one called get tickets. And then we can see the full execution of the ticket, including the complete API call. So we can see that this is the GET request that was performed, and this is the JSON payload that was returned. So if something doesn't work as expected, we can use this information to understand what went wrong. Remember, however, that I said that API plugins and actions in general can be used not only to get information, but also to create data. So you remember that when I added my plugin, I added also the post operation, so the operation to create a ticket. So for example, let's ask again, how can I connect to the corporate network? And again, we will get an information coming back from my documents in SharePoint. So let's say that I'm having trouble connecting to the corporate network. So I ask Copilot, I get this information, I go through this, and it's not enough. I still have problems. I need help. So I need to create a ticket. So I can say it's not working for me. Please create a ticket to ask support in configuring the company, the corporate network. Let's send it. And this time you will notice that despite we said that we want to always allow the usage from the agent experience, in my case, it's still asking me a confirmation to process my query. And the reason of doing that is because we are actually doing a write operation, so which is potentially more disruptive. So we want to make sure that before the ticket gets created, this is indeed the information we want for the ticket: the title, the description, the severity, and the status. So we can hit confirm, and now the agent is going to move forward and create, call the API to create the ticket, and it's going to add a new ticket inside my management system. So let's wait for the response. Usually it might take a little bit while because the post operation takes a little bit longer. Still thinking. Okay. The ticket was created. And we can see that. So we can see again the whole information. So we can see that this is the API call that was executed. And in fact, we can see the item that was created. In my case, I'm storing them into an Azure table. So this is the row from the Azure table. If you want to double check that this is really exists, we can go back to the Swagger UI of my API, and I can call the get ticket operation manually. And if we scroll down the list of responses that we have here, we can see that here we have the ticket that was just created. So support needed for configuring the corporate network. So we were able to create something outside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem from the Microsoft 365 Copilot experience, thanks to an agent. Before wrapping up, So we want to go deeper into this topic because this is requires another session because it's quite a deep topic. But just be aware that in case the declarative agent experience is not enough for your scenario, you need more flexibility, you need more control. We are giving you option also to create custom engine agents. Custom engine agents are agents where, as a developer, you can provide your own component for every layer of the agent. So you can provide your own foundational model, your own orchestration. You can decide to share the user experience, not just with Copilot, but to make the agent available through Teams, through Messenger, through Telegram, through a website, through any other type of user experience. And then you can also have your own layer of knowledge, skills, and autonomy. On this topic, recently at Ignite, we have announced the Microsoft 365 Agent SDK, which is a way to bring all together when it comes to build Microsoft 365 custom agent experiences. So you can build a custom engine agent using Azure AI Foundry, which is the new name of Azure AI Studio. So bring your own LLM, SLMs, so curatedly crafting your generative AI experience. You can bring your own complex orchestration rules by using frameworks like Semantic Kernel, and you can leverage the Copilot Studio channels to easily make the agent available through different surfaces. Which are the scenarios in which typically you use a custom engine agent approach? There are three main scenarios. The first one is when you need to use a specific large language model or a small language model. So let's say that you are in a scenario in which the features provided by the model behind Copilot are not good enough for you. You want to use something else. You want to use a competitor model. You can do that with a custom engine agent. Another very common scenario is when you want to make the agent available to people without a Copilot license. In the field, we saw this situation, for example, when you have big companies that have multiple employees who are first-line workers. So they are not business users. They are not working behind a desk with a computer, but maybe they are working in a store, they are working in a shop, they are working in a factory. So these are the users that typically they don't need the productivity tools like the Microsoft 365 ones because they are not sitting behind the desk working with Word or Excel, but they might need still to use an agent for a support agent, an help desk agent. And in this case, with a custom engine agent, you can make them available even if they don't have a Copilot license. Another scenario are people outside your organization. You are building an agent that you want to make available to your external customers through a custom user experience, a web app, a mobile app. In this case, you can use a custom engine agent. And finally, the last scenario is when you need more control over the entire experience. For example, you need to build an agent for a scenario in which you need custom moderation rules, or you need to comply with specific legal or regulatory frameworks requirements. In this case, with a declarative agent, with a custom engine agent, you can have full control over the prompt management, the actions, the triggers, the planner, the responsible AI layer, and so on. With this, I thank you very much for following me and for following this session. I hope it was a good starting point for giving you ideas on how you can improve the productivity of yourself and your organization by creating tailored and curated Copilot experiences using declarative agents and the Teams Toolkit. Thank you very much. And now I'll be happy to take any question.
Declarative agent using Teams Toolkit. And I really like the way you kind of showcased the nitty-gritty details about how to deploy one and create one, and what are the use case scenarios, what could be the possibilities and all that. So thank you so much. Looking forward for the part 2 session. So before I jump on to the questions, I always have these questions whenever I'm building an agent. So I think one of the audience also has asked the same question. Will the upload file button be enabled for agents? can be upload files so that the agent reads and interprets a file in a predefined specific way?
So at the
It's
moment,
always-
this is a very
Yeah,
good
sorry.
question. At the moment, the answer is no. So when you create a declarative agent, you need to point it to a specific data source in the knowledge, like a SharePoint site, or even a specific file in a SharePoint folder, but you are not able to upload the file as part of the conversation. This is a feature that right now we don't have for declarative agents.
Okay. And how about the factor of security plays in this declarative agent? What are the things audience or organization has to keep in mind while building one?
So for declarative agent, the security story and the security and privacy story is quite straightforward because declarative agents are built on top of the Microsoft 365 Copilot architecture. So all the security boundaries, all the privacy commitments, all the specific law enforcement that we are supporting, like UDB in Europe, they all apply exactly the same to agents. So we follow the same permissions of the Microsoft Graph. So if you share an agent with a colleague and this colleague doesn't have access to one or more SharePoint sites behind the agent won't be able to use this information to generate a response. If you have labels, if you have DLP policies, everything that we comply with the basic Copilot experience applies in the same way for a declarative agent.
Sounds good. And when you're using the API part, you're getting a response from the agent. Is there a way that also you can kind of update it? Like, say, for example, you have a product asking how many stock is available in the inventory, and it gives you a response with a updated count, and it says, would you like to update it, or would you like to delete an item, or you'd like to kind of put this item to a refurbishing or something like that? Is it possible with those kind of customization? Can you?
Yes, absolutely. Because so there are two ways to do that. So the first one is that you have seen that when you return a response, when you get a response from a plugin, you can use an adaptive card to render content, and the adaptive card might have also actions. So you can have an adaptive card with buttons that when you click on them, you trigger something on the backend. The other option is the one you have seen in my demo. If you supply an API that has endpoints to create or update content, like in my demo where my ticket API has also the option to create new tickets, you can use natural language to perform update operations on the backend. So, for example, you get the list of products, and then you can say, okay, now update the stock to 1,000 items, and it will call the API endpoint to update the information on the backend.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds interesting. So definitely, that is something that definitely audience would love to try the adaptive card, seeing more of customizations. So definitely, if you are fine with it, maybe we can discuss and come up with a part two with more detailed demos. So definitely looking forward to it, Matteo. It was an awesome session again, and we have one of the audience asking, Janish, can you share the presentation if Matteo is okay with it? We will see, or you do have the YouTube videos live. I think Path will share the link where you can watch the presentation, and you can see all the live decks there. And thank you so much, Matteo. It was awesome having you on Copilot Chronicles, and looking forward for more sessions like this.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
And thank you, Path, for being such a great host.
Wait, we have one last survey to complete. Yeah. So yes, I would request the attendees to drop us a feedback so that we could plan better and come up with more interactive sessions. I'll share the link in the bio as well, in the comment section as well. So meanwhile, Matteo, we have another question.
Yeah.
Like how to reference a public website as capabilities in a declarative agent.
So there is an extra capability that you can add, which is the option to enable web access. So the agent will automatically be able to perform a search on the web using the Bing APIs to retrieve information. I think I'm not sure if it's already rolled out or if it's still rolling out. But one of the capabilities that it's being added, it's the option to also specific a website. So instead of giving general knowledge, general access to the web, you can restrict the option. You can restrict the search only on a specific website. I know that as part of this the links that will be included in the recording, there will be some links with the documentation. Take a look. You will find the exact capabilities that you need to add in the JSON to enable this feature.
Sounds good, Matteo. So I think that would have answered the question from how to reference the public website capabilities. He says, thank you. And thank you so much, Matteo. Hope everybody has scanned the survey. In case if you missed it, you would find it in the comment section. And thank you so much again for joining the Copilot Chronicle series. We will come back with another exciting session next week. Stay tuned. Until then, have a good evening. Good night. See you all.
Everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Matteo.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.